Rugby round 16, the Saturday games are all done. Yeah, some results not as encouraging as others, and a few interesting stats from some of them. Let's have a look. So the Blues, gone down to the Rebels, 20 points to 10 at Eden Park. Blues have lost all their games at Eden Park this season. All of them. Still got one more chance to win a game, but if they can lose to the Reds after the June break, they will have lost every single home game in the season. I can't imagine that's ever happened before. Give Tana another couple of years, I think, at the moment. Tries to Hepatema for the Blues, and 2 to Meeks, Dane Hillett-Petty got 1 for the Rebels. This game, lead changed a few times. TMO was called in a few times. In terms of the players, you could tell the Rebels looked a lot more fired up for this one than the Blues. The Blues have nothing to play for this season, and it kind of showed in their attitude. Half-time it was 10 points to 12, so the Blues were still in it, but then they didn't score any points in the second half. Generally, it's pretty hard to win if you don't score any points in the second half, or in a half of football. Struggling with this one. The Rebels were pretty big at the right moments. There was one moment, I can't remember if it was Dane Hillett-Petty or Reece Hodge, who just got an ankle tap on the Blues guys as they were making a break. It looked like a try for all money, but the Rebels showed some good desperation in defence. Just most of their areas, the breakdown, the scrum, their scrum defence, because it was looking a bit shaky early on. Their line-out, it just looked slicker, not always. I'm not saying the Rebels are a great team after this result, because it was pretty scrappy. Neither team was very slick, but the Rebels were still a touch above the Blues, who were just very poor. They were getting some quick ball, they were getting up fast on defence, whereas the Blues, just like I said, a bit error-ridden, a bit sluggish. I mean, sure, the Blues have got a lot of guys out, but in terms of like having to rest All Blacks, that's not really an issue for them. All they have is Rieko Ioane to have a break. So that shouldn't really be a factor. The commentators mentioned a few times that the Blues were unlucky. Nah, it's not just luck. If the team ankle taps you to save you from getting a try, that's because they are trying very hard not to let you score a try. It's not because it's just bad luck. At full time, the possession, well, at half time, the Rebels had, I think, 65%. Possession at full time, it was still in the Rebels' favour. Possession territory. Too many penalties for the Blues, I suppose. No points in the second half, like I said. It's just a bit of a big low for the Blues. I mean, not that the Rebels are a bad team, but like I said before this game, up until this point, they had only beaten Australian conference teams except for the Sharks. And they hadn't won in New Zealand in a very long time. Anyway, credit to the Rebels. They wanted it more. They got it more. They showed skills in areas where the Blues were not able to. So, it's huge for them in their season. Going forward, they've got something to play for. I mean, they're putting their foot forward for playoffs, if not Australian conference toppers. I guess we'll wait and see, because the Waratahs had a win as well. So, it makes life pretty interesting in that conference. I will say, though, I'm not sure about Reece Hodge taking the kicks. I know he's playing at 10 now ahead of Debrasini, and Debrasini's not exactly like a Mornay Stain style like radar boot player, but Hodge kicks the ball pretty ugly sometimes. Like, if you want a guy to kick the ball from 50 metres out pretty much straight in front, Reece Hodge is your guy. He will boot that thing all day long, but when it takes more precision than just power, I don't know, he maybe just needs practice, get a good goal kicking coach. I know Andrew Mertens did it for a while with the Waratahs. Entice somebody like that to sit down with him and go through his technique and what he's doing, and if he can improve that aspect of his game, very good because he wasn't on touch with the boot really. Jordan Ulisi, the reserve hooker who's in the Wallabies squad, man, that guy just has no luck with injuries. He seems to have gone down with another one. Hopefully he's alright, but it looked pretty bad the way he was limping off the field. I must say though, if there was one bright spot of this match, it was the fact that because Lopeti Tamani was wearing 23, which is usually the number assigned to your final replacement, who's generally a utility back, they listed him on the little TV screen as they were going through the replacements, Lopeti Tamani, utility back. So that made me chuckle on a night where I was otherwise not very inclined to chuckle. I mean, I suppose he's smaller than Tangeli Naiyaravoro, so he could play in the outside backs, but not usually his thing. I guess the guy doing the graphics probably more about the graphics than about the rugby. Anyway, let's move on to the next one, as the commentators were trying to remind us during the game. Upcoming game, Chiefs Crusaders, 34 points to 20. Oh man, it was another kind of dominant performance from the Crusaders. It's another week where they've gone and just done one over a New Zealand team. This time it was away from home. The Chiefs were under the pump for large periods of this game. How many times did we see Damian McKenzie sitting in his own 22 having to just boot the heck out of the ball because they were getting squeezed? A lot of early pressure, and this is despite some disruptions to their starting lineup. They had no Goodhue, so Havili was playing at 12, and Taufua wasn't playing. So despite that, they were still kind of on the Chiefs pretty early. The Chiefs were able to hit back, but it was more like kind of on the counter, to be fair. Like Ngatai's setting up of a try was, it was more like counter-punching. Oh, I should say, tries to Wainui, 2 to Jacobson, Crusaders, Bearwell Curtis, Todd, Bridge, and Romano. So yeah, it was pretty relentless. The maul was just paying dividends for the Crusaders. They were getting all kinds of ground from that. The Chiefs were just struggling to disrupt it, especially in the first half. It's kind of scary that the Crusaders can be that disrupted in terms of their manpower. I mean, also the Chiefs are not having the best time with injuries. I mean, Retallick only lasted half the game, which is pretty scary, although from early reports it was precautionary. But yeah, the Crusaders can still be that good. They are really just a steamroller at the moment, going through everybody. I mean, it still wasn't vintage from them, to be fair. It wasn't. They were dropping the ball a fair bit. I don't know if you would say they're keeping the Chiefs in the game, but they weren't putting the Chiefs away anyway. The Chiefs will be pretty disappointed that they weren't really able to get that much into the game. They had a fair bit of ball in the second half, and they were just hammering away at the Crusaders, but unable to really get much pay for it. And there was one moment in particular, there was 73 minutes. The Chiefs were only 7 points down, and they had the ball pretty deep in their own half. They got a penalty. Damian McKenzie just tapped it and ran, and quickly, nothing happened from it. 73 minutes, there's still 7 minutes of game time left, plus whatever goes over the clock. I mean, the Highlanders and Hurricanes showed the other day, they went about 4 minutes into kind of added time for the end of the first half before the Highlanders got a try. So there's still plenty of time left with 7 minutes. I thought that was kind of telling of where the mentality of the Chiefs were at in that game, that they were just kind of desperate. I feel like a cool head was probably more needed there. And in terms of the Mo'unga versus DMAC battle, maybe Mo'unga's putting his hand up ahead of Damian McKenzie. Especially seeing as he didn't have a great night with the boot either, although Mo'unga did have to go off, so I'm not sure how his body is doing. It looked like a bit of cramp, but I guess we'll find out in the coming days. So yeah, I mean, possession and territory, 60+% for the Crusaders. They never really looked like losing it. It was pretty dominant stuff. Unfortunate for the Chiefs, but yeah, not able to replicate what the Highlanders did over the Hurricanes. So perhaps this is more telling about the level where the Crusaders and the Canes are at, rather than the Chiefs and the Highlanders, because the Crusaders now especially are looking just a cut above everybody else. Final game. Reds Waratahs. This game had more tries than the other two put together. It was Parisi, Higginbotham, Tupou, Mafi, Timu, Pataya, and Fagase for the Reds. It was Rona Wells, Nairovoro, Tufu Falau, Phipps, Gordon, and Clark for the Waratahs. I almost ran out of space on my little notepad here as I was going through this game because it was just helter-skelter stuff. There was a quick try for the Reds, excuse me, for Parisi. Dude really showed some gas, set up by Higginbotham. There was some needless TMO in this one. Like even that first try, which was an exciting start to the game. You know, 2 minutes into the game, the Reds go ahead and score a try, almost length of the field after an intercept. And then they're looking back at the TMO for Tupou on one of the other guys. It was just, and there was nothing doing. They need to sort that stuff out because that just, as a fan, you're sitting there, you're excited that the Reds, if you're at the stadium, your home team's just scored, and then they're, oh, wait, let's have a look. Put it up on the big screen. Oh, no, there's nothing there. You can take the kick. It's just, it doesn't make for a spectacle when you're wasting your time with that kind of stuff. Yeah. Good Lord, what's wrong with me today? So really tit for tat. The lead changed at least a couple of times in this one, but once the Waratahs kind of got out in front, they didn't really look like losing it, although towards the end, the Reds did really come back into it with a few kind of unanswered tries. It was going right until the 80th minute. Some pretty awful defending, I must say. If you're the Waratahs, you'd be pretty disappointed with how many points you let in. They could have been in a bonus point winning position, which in the Aussie Conference is quite important. But not able to hold the Reds out. The Reds don't even score that many tries on average. I think they're one of the lowest try-scoring teams, and yet they managed to do this to the Waratahs. So that's not encouraging. If you're Michael Checker, you're looking at some of this play going forward and thinking that looks good, but then imagining what the Irish can do if you're going to tackle like that. Not good at all. Tackling stats, Waratahs were at 69%, the Reds at 73%. That is poor. I mean, the lowest stat of the other two games was the Rebels at 81, and that is far above, these two guys. And that's the worst team of the other four. The others were all even higher in the slightly higher 80s. So, yeah, really poor defensive display. Run meters, territory position, all pretty even. Waratahs had the better of the numbers in the first half, the Reds in the second, so... Hamish Stewart, man, what a night with the boot. That guy missed a whole lot of kicks. They could have been even a lot more closer if he'd nailed some of those kicks. And they were just going like a golfer who's just got the jips, you know. He's yips. Yeah, he wasn't having a good night, and they kept him on kicking. I guess nobody else was able to kick because usually if you miss three that badly, they pull you and let someone else have a go, but I guess nobody else could, but that was getting embarrassing. He is also another guy who needs a kicking coach. Damien McKenzie, Reece Hodge, and Hamish Stewart. Not very good nights with the boot, so that was, that was something to kind of be mindful of as well. If Hamish Stewart's going to be... I think they said in the commentary that he's been kind of called into the Wallabies just for a bit of a train. Like, he's not part of the squad, but he's going to have a bit of training time with them. So, yeah, work on his kicking, because Foley was kicking pretty well. So, yeah, he definitely needs to work on that aspect of his game if he's going to put himself forward as a leading candidate for the 10 jersey in Australia. So, yeah, definitely could have been a lot closer with those kicks. But, yeah... Interesting result for the Aussie Conference. It's really all on between the Rebels and the Waratahs. Like I said, Crusaders cut above. Blues just awful team. Yeah. Sooner I stop talking about them, probably the better. Disappointing for the Chiefs and the Reds to go down at home, but neither of them disgraced. Just not quite up to it. Alright guys, that's it from me. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments, and I'll talk to you again for another one soon. See you later.